There is a moment many people experience but rarely talk about openly. You walk into a room full of people. Maybe it's a gathering, a workplace meeting, a party, or even a casual group conversation. And within seconds, something inside you tightens. It isn't fear exactly, and it isn't insecurity either. It's a quiet awareness that the energy in the room doesn't match yours. Everyone else seems comfortable playing along with the rhythm of the group, laughing at the same jokes, agreeing with the same opinions, blending together in a way that feels effortless. But you stand there, feeling slightly out of step, like a musician hearing a different beat than the rest of the band. For a long time, you may have interpreted that feeling as a personal flaw. Maybe you told yourself you were socially awkward, too serious, too observant, or just someone who struggled to fit in. Yet the deeper truth is something far more significant. That feeling of not belonging isn't social failure. It is often spiritual confirmation. The people who are meant to move differently through life rarely feel comfortable inside environments built on conformity. The crowd functions on a simple rule: stability through similarity. Everyone subconsciously agrees to keep the same emotional temperature, the same habits, the same expectations. Anyone who steps outside that pattern immediately stands out, even if they aren't trying to. And when you carry a different sense of awareness, the difference becomes impossible to hide. You start noticing things others ignore. You feel shifts in tone, hidden tension in conversations, the quiet signals behind people's words. While the group focuses on surface interactions, your mind and spirit pick up the undercurrent beneath them. That heightened perception can make ordinary social spaces feel exhausting, because you aren't just hearing what is said, you're also sensing what is unsaid. This is where many people begin to misunderstand their own path. Instead of recognizing the difference as direction, they treat it as something to fix. They push themselves harder to blend in, adjusting their tone, their opinions, even their boundaries, just to reduce the tension of standing out. But every time you force yourself into the rhythm of the crowd, something inside you feels smaller, quieter, less alive. That inner discomfort is not a weakness. It's a signal. It's the first boundary life places around someone who is meant to walk a different road. The crowd rewards people who adapt themselves to fit the group, but calling works in the opposite direction. Calling asks you to become more defined, not less. It requires a kind of inner consecration, a willingness to remain aligned with your own clarity, even when everyone around you seems to be moving another way. This is why the earliest sign of purpose often looks like social distance. Not dramatic isolation, but a subtle sense that the environments where most people feel comfortable do not fully hold your spirit. You might notice that certain conversations drain you quickly, especially when they revolve around gossip, competition, or constant validation. You might find yourself leaving events earlier than others because the energy begins to feel heavy after a while. You might even catch people studying you quietly, trying to understand why you don't react the same way everyone else does. None of this means you are broken. It means you are aware. And awareness changes the way you experience spaces built for unconscious agreement. The feeling of not belonging is often the earliest signal that your life is moving in a direction the crowd cannot yet see. It doesn't mean you are better than anyone else. It simply means your alignment is different. When someone begins to follow a path guided by deeper conviction rather than social approval, the distance between them and the group naturally grows. At first, it feels confusing. You may wonder why interactions that once seemed normal now feel uncomfortable. But over time, you begin to realize that the discomfort is actually a form of protection. If you blended into every environment effortlessly, you would also absorb every expectation that comes with it. You would begin shaping your life according to the standards of the room instead of the direction of your calling. By allowing you to feel the mismatch, life quietly steers you away from places that could dilute who you are becoming. The strange truth is that many of the rooms where you feel the most out of place are the exact environments where your clarity is most needed. The contrast reveals your role. When everyone else is moving along a familiar path, the person who senses something different becomes the one capable of changing direction first. That difference is not accidental. It is the beginning of a journey where belonging is replaced by purpose, where approval is replaced by alignment, and where the quiet voice inside you becomes more important than the loud voices around you. And once you start recognizing that pattern, you stop asking the question that once haunted you. Why don't I fit here? Instead, you begin asking a better one. What path is this difference trying to lead me toward? Once you begin recognizing that sense of not belonging, another realization soon follows. The crowd doesn't just fail to understand you, it often resists you. This resistance rarely appears in obvious ways at first. Instead, it shows up through subtle pressure, small remarks, or quiet shifts in the way people respond to your presence. Groups operate with an instinct for balance. Every social circle develops an unspoken agreement about how people should behave, what opinions are acceptable, and how far anyone can deviate before drawing attention. When someone enters that environment with a noticeably different perspective or energy, the group reacts almost automatically, not because individuals are malicious, but because the collective system is designed to preserve itself. The easiest way for a group to remain stable is by encouraging everyone to blend in. That pressure might look like teasing when you decline something everyone else is doing, confusion when you set a boundary others never question, or subtle exclusion when you refuse to play along with certain dynamics. Many people respond to these signals by adjusting themselves quickly. They laugh along, agree politely, and smooth out any difference so the group stays comfortable. But the chosen one, the person who carries a deeper sense of direction, doesn't respond that way for long. Something inside them resists the instinct to merge with the crowd. It's not arrogance. It's alignment. When your inner compass is tuned towards something larger than approval, the need to be accepted begins to lose its grip. That shift alone is enough to make you stand out. What truly separates you from the crowd isn't loudness or rebellion. It's the quiet presence of discernment. You begin noticing patterns others overlook. You recognize contradictions in conversations, the difference between genuine connection and performative friendliness. When people chase validation or status, you see the emotional cost beneath the surface. This ability to observe without immediately participating gives you a kind of distance that unsettles the group. Most social environments rely on everyone reinforcing the same narrative. When one person starts seeing through that narrative, the illusion becomes harder to maintain. Another quality that sets you apart is restraint. In a culture that encourages constant expression and attention-seeking, restraint appears unusual. You don't feel the need to prove yourself in every conversation. You don't chase every opportunity for recognition. You speak when something meaningful needs to be said, and you remain silent when the conversation revolves around empty noise. That quiet control creates a presence people notice, even if they can't explain why. Many interpret it incorrectly, assuming distance means judgment or superiority. In reality, it simply reflects a different priority. Your attention is no longer organized around approval. The third quality that makes you stand out is standards. The moment you stop compromising your values just to maintain acceptance, the dynamic around you begins to change. People who once felt comfortable around you may suddenly become defensive or critical. This reaction isn't really about you. It's about the mirror your choices create. When someone refuses to lower their standards, it reminds others of the compromises they have accepted in their own lives. That reminder can feel uncomfortable, and discomfort often transforms into resistance. This is where the invisible test begins. The crowd watches how you respond to being pushed slightly outside the circle. Do you shrink your boundaries to regain approval? Or do you remain aligned with what you know is right for you? Most people never realize how often this test appears in daily life. It might come through a sarcastic comment, a moment of social exclusion, or a situation where following your values means standing alone for a while. Each moment quietly measures the strength of your alignment. The people who pass this test are not the ones who argue loudly or try to convince everyone around them. They are the ones who stay steady. They don't overreact to rejection, and they don't beg for understanding. They simply continue moving according to the direction already forming within them. Over time, the crowd begins to sense that something about you cannot be easily reshaped. Some individuals will drift away, uncomfortable with the difference. Others will observe you with a mixture of curiosity and respect. Either way, the dynamic changes. You stop being someone who adjusts to the environment and become someone whose presence alters it. There is also a surprising warning hidden inside this process. If you suddenly find yourself fitting into every group effortlessly, it may be a signal that you have softened your alignment more than you realize. The path of purpose rarely moves in perfect harmony with the expectations of the crowd. A certain amount of friction is natural when your life is guided by something deeper than social approval. That friction isn't random, it's directional. It points toward the spaces where your authenticity begins separating you from environments that were never meant to shape your future. After a period of experiencing that friction with the crowd, many people enter a stage that feels even more confusing. Instead of trying harder to connect, they begin feeling an unexpected pull in the opposite direction. Social environments that once seemed normal suddenly feel draining. Conversations that revolve around surface-level topics feel difficult to stay engaged in. The noise of constant interaction begins to feel overwhelming, even when nothing particularly negative is happening. At first, this shift can be alarming. You might wonder if you are becoming antisocial or disconnected. But what you are actually experiencing is something far more intentional. This is the season of withdrawal, the moment when life begins recalibrating your environment so your spirit can evolve. When someone is moving toward a deeper purpose, the mind and body often respond by creating distance from distractions that once felt harmless. This isn't about rejecting people, it's about protecting clarity. The more aware you become, the harder it is to remain fully present in spaces that rely on superficial interaction. Your nervous system begins reacting differently to environments where authenticity is missing. You might notice that your energy drops quickly in certain groups, even when the conversation seems friendly on the surface. You may leave a gathering feeling strangely tired, despite nothing dramatic happening during the interaction. That exhaustion is a signal, not a flaw. Your mind is processing far more information than it used to, recognizing emotional signals and inconsistencies that once passed unnoticed. The body responds by pulling you away from spaces where constant filtering becomes necessary. One of the most misunderstood signs of this upgrade is the growing desire for solitude. Many people interpret this craving for quiet as loneliness or emotional withdrawal. But the truth is more nuanced. Solitude is not about avoiding people. It is about creating a space where your mind can hear itself clearly again. When life begins upgrading your awareness, the volume of the outside world can temporarily drown out the subtle guidance forming inside you. Solitude becomes the environment where that guidance grows strong enough to lead your decisions. In these quieter seasons, you may find yourself reflecting more deeply on past experiences, reevaluating friendships, and questioning patterns that once felt automatic. This reflection is not regression. It is recalibration. The version of you that once moved comfortably through certain environments no longer fits the direction your life is taking. As that realization settles in, your body naturally slows down. This is why many people in this stage experience unusual fatigue. They sleep more, withdraw from social plans, or feel mentally drained after situations that previously felt manageable. From the outside, it might look like laziness. In reality, it is transition. The body often reduces outward activity so the inner transformation can complete its work. Your spirit is reorganizing priorities, values, and perceptions that will shape your next stage of life. That process requires stillness. The same principle applies to a seed buried in the ground. From the surface, nothing appears to be happening. Yet beneath the soil, an entirely new structure is forming. Roots are stretching, systems are building, and energy is gathering for the moment growth finally breaks through the surface. The chosen one moves through a similar hidden stage. The withdrawal season creates the quiet conditions necessary for clarity to mature. During this time, you may also begin noticing a difference between solitude and isolation. Solitude is chosen, intentional, and healing. It gives you the chance to reconnect with your own thoughts and regain emotional balance. Isolation, on the other hand, is driven by fear. It closes you off from connection and convinces you that retreat is the only way to stay safe. Understanding the difference between these two states is essential. Solitude strengthens your alignment, while isolation weakens it. The goal of this season is not to disappear from the world. It is to return to it with clearer direction and stronger boundaries. As the upgrade continues, you may start noticing that certain relationships naturally fade, while others become more meaningful. Conversations shift from superficial topics to deeper discussions about growth, purpose, and personal truth. Your tolerance for environments built on pretense decreases, while your appreciation for authenticity grows stronger. None of these changes happen overnight, and they rarely arrive with dramatic announcements. Instead, they unfold quietly, one small decision at a time. You choose rest instead of constant activity. You decline invitations that no longer align with your energy. You protect your attention more carefully than before. Each of these choices reinforces the transformation already taking place within you. And slowly, the distance that once felt confusing begins to make sense. You are not drifting away from life. You are preparing for the next stage of it. Just when you begin growing comfortable with that distance, something interesting often happens. The same environments that once felt effortless start reaching back toward you. Old friends may question why you seem different. Conversations that once flowed easily begin carrying subtle tension. Invitations appear that tempt you to return to habits you have already outgrown. These moments are rarely coincidences. They represent one of the final stages in the separation process, the moment when the crowd tests whether your alignment is temporary or real. Social systems naturally attempt to restore balance when someone moves outside their established pattern. The first method the crowd often uses is mockery. It may appear as a joking comment or a playful accusation. "You think you're better than us now?" On the surface, it sounds light-hearted, but underneath, the humor is a challenge. The group is measuring whether you will shrink your boundaries to reassure them. Many people respond to this pressure by over-explaining themselves, trying to prove they are still the same person. But over-explanation weakens alignment. The chosen one learns that silence is often the strongest response. You do not need to defend growth. When you remain calm instead of reacting emotionally, the test loses its power. The second tactic the crowd uses is guilt. Someone may say, "You've changed," or "You're not like you used to be." The statement carries an emotional undertone, suggesting that your development has somehow betrayed the relationship. In truth, change is the natural result of growth. Every person who follows a path of purpose eventually outgrows certain environments. The problem is not that you have changed. The problem is that some people expect you to remain the same, so their world can stay comfortable. When guilt appears, the chosen one responds with clarity rather than apology. Growth does not require permission. The third tactic is bait. This is often the most subtle and effective form of pressure. The crowd may attempt to pull you back into familiar patterns through drama, gossip, old habits, or emotional triggers they know once affected you. The situation may look harmless on the surface, but its real purpose is to see whether your new boundaries will hold under pressure. The key to passing this test lies in 3 simple principles: stay quiet, stay consistent, and stay selective. Staying quiet means resisting the urge to explain every decision. Not every boundary needs a speech. When people sense that you are comfortable with your choices, their curiosity eventually fades. Staying consistent means aligning your actions with your values even when the situation becomes uncomfortable. Consistency is louder than any argument because it demonstrates that your direction is genuine. Staying selective means recognizing that access to your time and energy is earned, not automatically given. The chosen one understands that peace is a resource worth protecting. In practical terms, this often means developing simple responses that reinforce your boundaries without creating unnecessary conflict. Phrases such as, "That doesn't align with me anymore," or "I'm focused on something different right now," communicate clarity without aggression. They acknowledge the conversation while keeping your direction intact. The maturity of this stage lies in realizing that understanding is not required for obedience. Not everyone will agree with the path you are walking, and many will never fully understand why your priorities changed. That misunderstanding does not invalidate your direction. The crowd seeks reassurance that its way of living is correct. Your willingness to follow a different path challenges that assumption, and challenges naturally create discomfort. Over time, however, something unexpected happens. The same people who once questioned your distance begin observing the results of your alignment. They notice the steadiness in your decisions, the calm in your presence, the clarity in your direction. Even if they never admit it openly, the consistency of your path begins earning quiet respect. And the loneliness that once felt like rejection begins revealing itself as something else entirely. It was never punishment. It was preparation. As the journey continues, the meaning of your distance from the crowd gradually becomes clear. What once felt like isolation transforms into something more powerful: clarity about who you are and what your life is meant to accomplish. The same traits that once made you feel different now begin functioning as strengths. Your discernment allows you to recognize opportunities others overlook. Your restraint keeps you from wasting energy on distractions that would pull you away from your direction. Your standards protect your integrity in situations where compromise would be easier. The truth that emerges from this process is simple but profound. You were never designed to blend into every environment. The world often labels difference as a flaw, but purpose requires distinction. When someone carries a calling that demands depth, honesty, and courage, they cannot fully thrive inside spaces built on convenience and conformity. For a long time, you may have wondered whether you were too intense, too observant, or too difficult to understand. But the more you grow into your alignment, the more those labels begin losing their meaning. You are not too much. You are simply tuned to a different frequency than the crowd around you. You are not strange. You are aware. And you are not hard to love. You are simply unwilling to dilute yourself for acceptance. This realization changes the way you interpret every experience that once made you question your place in the world. The conversations where you felt out of sync were not evidence of failure. They were signs that your path was diverging from the expectations of the room. The friendships that slowly faded were not proof that you were unworthy of connection. They were transitions, making space for relationships aligned with your growth. The loneliness that occasionally visited your life was not rejection. It was appointment. Throughout history, moments of elevation have often begun with separation. Before someone can lead, they must first step outside the patterns they are meant to challenge. Distance creates the perspective necessary to see what the crowd cannot yet recognize. It gives you the freedom to develop ideas, values, and convictions that are not shaped by the pressure of immediate approval. When that perspective finally translates into action, others begin noticing the difference. Your presence carries a quiet confidence that does not depend on validation. Your decisions reflect a sense of direction that no longer shifts with the opinions of the moment. Opportunities appear that resonate with your values instead of demanding compromise. This is the reward of staying aligned when the easier option would have been blending in. The path that once looked lonely begins revealing itself as a runway. Every step away from the crowd created space for a life built on authenticity instead of approval. The realization brings a kind of freedom many people spend their entire lives searching for. You no longer need to prove your worth through belonging. You no longer chase rooms that fail to recognize your value. Instead, you move forward with a simple understanding. The environments meant for your purpose will recognize you without needing explanation. And the ones that do not were never meant to shape your future in the first place. At this point, the message becomes clear enough to say aloud. You release the need to fit into spaces that require you to shrink. You accept the path that feels different because it leads towards something meaningful. And you choose purpose over popularity, knowing that the crowd may not always understand the direction of your life. But understanding was never the requirement. Alignment was. The person who once stood quietly at the edge of the room, wondering why they felt out of place, eventually realizes something extraordinary. They were not standing outside the circle because they were rejected. They were standing there because their path was leading somewhere the crowd was never meant to go. There is a particular moment in a woman's life when the quiet tension she has carried for years finally becomes impossible to ignore. It doesn't arrive dramatically. It begins as a subtle awareness, the feeling that the version of herself she has been presenting to the world no longer feels true. For a long time, she may have tried to adapt, softening her opinions so others feel comfortable, lowering her standards so relationships remain peaceful, shrinking her presence so rooms stay easy to manage. Many women learn early that acceptance often comes through accommodation. They become skilled at reading emotional atmospheres, adjusting their tone, smoothing conflicts before they escalate. That ability can be a strength, but when it becomes constant, it also creates a quiet exhaustion. Somewhere beneath the effort of maintaining harmony, the woman begins to realize she has been shaping herself around the expectations of others more than around the truth of who she is becoming. The moment she begins noticing that imbalance, something shifts. She starts feeling the same sensation that many chosen ones experience, the realization that the crowd's approval has been quietly directing her life. When that awareness appears, the first instinct is often confusion. She wonders if she has changed too much, if her growing independence might push people away, if standing in her truth will make life harder. But that discomfort is not a warning to go backward. It is a signal that her identity is evolving beyond the boundaries that once defined it. A woman who begins stepping into alignment often notices that certain conversations no longer hold her interest. She finds herself less willing to participate in gossip, less eager to perform emotional labor for people who take her kindness for granted, less interested in environments where authenticity is replaced by competition or comparison. These changes are not signs of bitterness, they are signs of clarity. The woman who once tried to keep everyone comfortable begins realizing that peace built on self-sacrifice is not real peace at all. It is simply quiet compromise. As this awareness grows, the people around her may begin reacting in subtle ways. Some may say she has become distant or difficult. Others may claim she has changed. In truth, she has changed, but not in the way they imagine. She has stopped negotiating with parts of herself that deserve respect. For many women, this stage feels lonely at first. The expectations placed on them by society often reward selflessness and emotional availability. When a woman begins protecting her time, her energy, and her boundaries, it can surprise people who have grown accustomed to a constant presence. Yet this is where the deeper transformation begins. She starts recognizing that her value does not come from how much she gives away. It comes from how honestly she lives. Instead of trying to maintain approval from every direction, she begins focusing on alignment. That alignment changes the way she walks into rooms. Her voice becomes steadier because she no longer filters every thought through the fear of judgment. Her presence becomes calmer because she is no longer performing a role designed for someone else's comfort. The crowd may still misunderstand her, but their misunderstanding no longer controls her direction. Over time, something remarkable happens. The same independence that once made her feel out of place begins attracting the right people into her life. Authentic relationships start forming around shared values rather than convenience. Conversations become deeper, more honest, more meaningful. She discovers that when she stops chasing belonging, belonging often finds her in unexpected ways. The environments that once rejected her authenticity begin losing their power over her entirely. She understands that she was never meant to fit inside spaces that required her to disappear. A woman who embraces her calling does not become colder or harsher. She becomes clearer. Her kindness remains, but it is guided by wisdom rather than obligation. Her compassion remains, but it is balanced by self-respect. She learns that protecting her peace is not selfish, it is necessary, and the difference becomes visible to everyone around her. People sense the change in the way she carries herself, in the calm confidence behind her decisions, in the quiet certainty that no longer depends on outside approval. The woman who once wondered why she never quite fit into the crowd eventually understands the truth. She was never meant to disappear into it. She was meant to grow beyond it. If you've ever felt like you don't belong in the crowd, maybe that feeling was never a weakness. It was direction. Stay aligned with who you're becoming. The right path rarely looks popular at first. Subscribe if you're choosing purpose over approval, and walk this journey with others who are set apart.